Well, week one of the college football season brought us no shortage of surprises. Carson Beck in Miami surprised us last night, and so did CJ Daniels. My gosh, one-handed catch has to be the leading catch of the year candidate, that's for sure. We were paying attention to this one. Incredible win over Notre Dame. And with the win and Notre Dame's loss, there's sure to be some movement in our latest college football power rankings. For much more on these, as you see here, Ohio State number 1. Penn State comes in number 2. LSU, they finally got a win in their season opener, land at number 3. But hello, Miami entering the top 5. For much more on this, let's go ahead and welcome in our own Danny Kanell and Brandon Marcello. Guys, we'll get to Miami in a second, but 2 snaps, right, for Brian Kelly and company, who finally get it done in a season opener on the road against Clemson. They move up to number 3 in your rankings, Brandon.
Yeah, very impressive. LSU's defense has been revamped overnight through the transfer portal. Blake Baker, a lot of pressure on him. He came into LSU as the highest paid defensive coordinator. Didn't live up to expectations last year, so they rebuilt that defense. They are incredible in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Garrett Nussmeier showed in week 1 why he might be underrated as a pro prospect. I think he's a guy that could very well vault all the others we're seeing, including Arch Manning, who struggled in week 1 in his debut. But LSU just has all the pieces in place this year to win a championship. And the one doubt we all had in our mind was, man, they just can't win season openers. Going 0-5, 0-3 under Brian Kelly. But they were darn impressive at Clemson. And I would say their toughest season opener during this 5-game, 6-game stretch. And they won it. And they won it with defense and with Garrett Nussmeier making big plays and big moments. And quite honestly, LSU should have won that game by double digits, if not for a boneheaded decision by the officials to overturn a touchdown that I thought was a touchdown catch, and then also some other turnovers and mistakes. LSU is legit and a championship contender this year.
I think so too, Brandon. That was, I thought, the most impressive win of the weekend because of where it was. I mean, going to Death Valley, handling that crowd. In total agree with you. Garrett Nussmeier, not only from the perspective of how he played, but to have somebody who's got that swagger, that control, the emotional heartbeat of that team, to put them in the right situations. A lot of little things throughout the game that I was noticing, aside from the great throws that he made at times, but checking out the right things, not making the big mistake, coming up big when he had to. I thought that was phenomenal. And their defense, you mentioned Blake Baker. How about them using Harold Perkins, who's been somebody they've been trying to figure out what role he plays in that defense, comes up with the massive pressure to force Cade Klubnik to throw it much earlier than he wanted to in that situation. Totally agree with your perspective on LSU. On the flip side, Clemson, I don't know what to do with them now because that was a concerning loss for them. They were supposed to be one of the best teams in the country. I still think they could be, but the offensive side of the ball was definitely concerning. Their inability to run the football and have a true running back to emerge for them absolutely has some people concerned, and I think rightfully so in Clemson this year. So we'll see how they bounce back. They can do last year what they did after bouncing back after that loss to Georgia, but you saw the same look on Cade Klubnik's face. A little bit of deer in the headlights, a little bit of lack of confidence. That has me concerned about Clemson.
A win on the road against Clemson will warrant a top 3 ranking, that's for sure. So will a win over Notre Dame, a team who's fresh off a national championship appearance. What did you learn about Miami last night, Danny, who vaults into the top 5 in our power rankings?
Couple things. One, I was very curious to see what Carson Beck would look like, Jordan. Like just new system, elbow surgery, how would he fit? I thought he looked comfortable, like very poised, composed. But going through Shannon Dawkins' system, I thought he knew where to go with the football. Credit to his offensive line because they gave him great protection. They didn't really got away from being able to run the ball as successfully in the second half, but I think that's clearly one of their strengths. And then since we're talking about defense, I think you have to give a tip of your cap to that defensive line. Akeem Mesidor, Ruben Bain coming off the edge, completely neutralizing Jeremiah Love, who I thought was one of the best running backs in the country. And I get that they had a young quarterback starting in C.J. Carr, but Miami's defense, I think, which had such a long way to go. Like Carson Beck came in there to replace Cam Ward, and he's done a really good job of that one. The more dramatic improvement needed to take place on the defensive side of the ball. So that what I think is probably should be the most pleasing thing for a Miami Hurricane to see.
The thing that really concerned me, the one thing that concerned me about Miami was I just kept expecting the Mario Cristobal clock mismanagement to come back to haunt him. I mean, even going just outside the red zone, kicking a 47-yard field goal with 1:04 left, they weren't trying to throw the ball to get even deeper into Notre Dame territory. And I was going, man, they are just playing with fate right now, which is Mario Cristobal saying. But the kicker nailed it, and then the defense stepped up and slowed down Notre Dame. And in fact, it was Marcus Freeman and his quarterback, CJ Carr, end up having the clock mismanagement issues of their own, unable to spike the ball and get one more play off to potentially win the game. The one other thing that would be concerning, and I'm not being negative about Miami, but there was a stretch there from the third to the fourth quarter. They had 4 straight drives without a first down. They had 13 plays or 15 plays where they didn't get a first down. That seemed to me they were tightening up a little bit. Credit Notre Dame's defense, yes, but I think Miami was feeling it a little bit, tightened up. But I'll tell you what, you can't ask for a better week 1 win and debut for a roster that is comprised of so many new pieces at the skill positions, not just Carson Beck, but at receiver, and a freshman like Malachi Toney to come in. Listen, I was down at Miami this spring for their spring game on the field with Mario Cristobal, and they kept telling me, watch this Malachi Toney kid. He is fantastic. Not only is he going to play for us, but we think he could break a lot of records before his career is over with here. What a debut for them. Very, very, very happy with what Miami's got going on right now. They answered pretty much every one of my concerns with flying colors.
Yeah, a big win there for Miami. Can't say the same for our friends in Texas, the Longhorns, after the loss to Ohio State and a really rough debut for quarterback Arch Manning. Texas, as expected, falls to 7 in the power rankings. Luckily, the next few games should be wins for this Longhorns team as they look to get back on track here. Brandon, how can they take advantage of the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, just get Arch Manning more comfortable there in the pocket. I thought early in the game he was thinking too much from the perspective of, I can't take off and run if I don't see a receiver open. I think he was a little bit too much in his head at that point, and it led to some bad throws and some bad decisions. Listen, Danny could go into this much deeper because he played the quarterback position. But I'll also say this. In the press box, you get a bigger view of everything. Ohio State's secondary shut down those Texas receivers for the most part, and I think Arch Manning just didn't have many places to throw. He struggled last season, if you remember, on short and intermediate routes. He's a beautiful deep ball thrower, but he struggled with some decision-making on the shorter throws last year. And against Ohio State, he seemed timid and not wanting to make those type of throws. I think he was wanting to go big or nothing on several plays, but they were locked down downfield. But credit to Steve Sarkisian just admitting afterward what everybody was thinking. I need to give more designed runs to Arch Manning. That's a big strength of his. That's what made him so successful last season off the bench. They need to do that earlier in games to get him more comfortable. And these next couple of weeks, they'll be able to do just that against inferior competition.
You know what else I would do, Brandon? I would use a little tempo. When they started going no huddle, you don't have as much time to think. You can just play the sport. You're getting your calls fast. You're just going. I thought he looked much more comfortable in that second half when they were playing behind because they had to. And he just sort of looked more comfortable. Early on, he did look rattled. He looked, a little bit nervous, anxious within the pocket, kind of jittery feet. Didn't set his feet and really throw the ball with a lot of authority. They've got 3 games. And I did not have Texas in my preseason, pick to win the national championship because I think this is normal. Like, this is a first-year starter. He was on the road. I thought that was more of what I would expect from Arch Manning. But then the next time they play, an SEC opponent will be in Florida, in Gainesville, which is not going to be easy. So they have to get his confidence level up. Let him have some big games statistically. Let him kind of figure things out operating that system, or else it could be a much more bumpy ride than people thought for the Texas Longhorns.
One more thing. Could you imagine if Texas was shut out in that game, how the voters would have reacted to that, and how the CFP later down the season, if they're a 2 or maybe even 3-loss team, would judge them by being shut out against a good team? That would have been gigantic for them. It's good that they got that 1 touchdown. I know that sounds silly.
No.
If they were shut out, things would be looking a lot different today.
No, it's a great point to bring up because we see it time and time again, and it will definitely play a role at the end of the season, right? Lastly, let's end on a high note, shall we, gentlemen? FSU, a team that almost everyone wrote off this offseason, and for good reason. 2-10, not ideal. Danny climbs to number 13 after a dominant win over Bama, potentially exposing the Tide. It's an excellent win, but it's just one win. What more do you want to see from the Seminoles as the weeks roll on? How can they build upon this?
Oh, I want to see 12-0, Jordan. I want to see this team run the tables, what I want to see. But you know what? There was a lot of nervous, cautiously optimistic, but nervous Florida State fans. And boy, after Alabama went the length of the field with that 17-play drive to open the game, being on the sidelines, there was a lot of anxious energy. How is our defense going to be? But I thought you got just such a resounding performance where they dominated from that point on. They dominated both lines of scrimmage. You got exactly what you wanted from Gus Malzahn's system with a quarterback who really seems to fit like a glove with what Gus wants to do, and Tommy Castellanos getting those little hidden yards, running the football, coming up with a few big plays in the pass game. I do think that was sort of those. It's been such a long, emotional roller coaster going all the way back, not only to 2-10, but getting left out of the playoffs, feeling like you got the shaft. Then last year, losing to programs like Duke, losing to your rivals. It was an incredibly long offseason for that program, and the thing they desperately needed was their confidence back, their belief back, and it is pretty amazing what one game can do, but I think the entire country is looking at this Florida State team entirely differently because and I think what's going to be interesting, I think Alabama still could be good. I know there's a lot of even Bama fans who are ready to throw in the towel on them. We'll see what the season holds for Alabama, but I think them playing with a new quarterback, I don't think it was shocking that they struggled. Now, there was some definitely causes for concern, but I think it'll be interesting to see what direction Alabama goes from here as people are ready to just fire Kalen DeBoer and say he can't coach anymore. Fascinated to see the direction of both these programs. What a huge win for Florida State.
Something just about Gus Malzahn playing against and coaching against Alabama brings out the best in him.
Yes.
The offensive coordinator of Florida State now, former Auburn coach and UCFF coach, Gus called me this morning. Very, very happy. We discussed the game a little bit. He told me about how much more comfortable he feels on the sidelines, only having to worry about the offense, not worrying about someone in his ear, talking about what should we be doing here on third down, the defense, what's going on with special teams, are we getting guys in and on the field. He said he was much more comfortable, was able to go through his play sheet, look at things. He said he called a great game, obviously, but it's also allowed him here in this offseason to dig into his bag of tricks and dig up plays he hasn't used since the late 2000s when he was an OC at Tulsa. He's much more creative right now than he has been in previous years. I'm excited for Florida State fans because you're getting the best version of Gus Malzahn as a play caller right now.
Brandon Marcello, incredible insight there. I got to tell you, I feel bad for the UCF fans out there. I kept thinking that the whole game, but awesome insight there, Brandon. Danny, always great to see you. Stay there because more from Danny in a moment. More from us when we return, but you can get more college football talk with the College Football Insiders podcast. All you got to do, scan that QR code on your screen and watch and listen wherever you get your pods.